Hey guys, welcome back. This is the fourth and final video in my sourdough bread series. In this video, I will show you how I bake and score my bread. So in the last video, we shaped our bread. There's also a video on how to make the bread and how to care for the sourdough start. So my dough has been in my fridge proving overnight. So it's been about 18 hours. And we are ready to bake our dough. Now, I like to cook mine in a Dutch oven. I use a Le Creuset. It's enameled cast iron and it works really, really well. So what I'm going to do is preheat my oven to 475. And once it gets to 475, I want to put my Dutch oven pan in the oven without the bread in it to let it heat up. And I put it in the oven for about 20 minutes so it can get nice and hot. Okay, so while that's in the oven heating up, we are going to prep our dough. So I get my first loaf out of the fridge. I'm going to leave my other one in the fridge and I'm going to gently unwrap it. And it looks beautiful and perfect and I am excited to bake this dough. So I'm just going to set that aside and let it hang out on the counter. And then to make my life easier baking the bread, I am going to put it on a piece of parchment paper. So I actually cut both of them out at the same time. And our goal with this is to cut bigger than your bread so you have something to hang on to. And this is possibly the worst circle-ish shape I've ever cut out in my life, but here you go. So I'm going to put my other piece of parchment paper aside for my next loaf of bread. And I'm going to take some cornmeal and sprinkle it on top of the parchment paper. And this is going to help our bread not burn on the bottom. And then I'm going to take my lame. So this is a blade that we're going to use to score our dough. Lame actually means blade in French, and it's basically a long handle with a metal razor on the end. And this, using this helps the bread release steam, and it helps control a little bit of the expansion of the loaf as it bakes. So I found this on Amazon. It was maybe 20 bucks, I think. It works perfectly. It came with a lot of extra blades and it lives in this cute little container and it works really well for what I wanted to do. I started using a craft blade to try and do this and guys, this works much better. Okay, now I'm going to gently take my dough out and pull off that tea towel. I'm going to place my dough seam side down right on my parchment paper and I'm going to first do some decorative little scoring on top to make it look pretty. And first, I'm going to decide where I'm going to put my big cut in my dough, and then I put little designs everywhere else on the dough. So I decided to put the big score across the side, the right side, and so I'm just going to take my blade and do little superficial cuts into the dough. So just gently, you don't want to cut too deep or it's going to open up the dough too much. We just want this to make it look pretty and be decorative. And I never really know exactly what type of design I'm going to put on my bread until I'm actually doing it. So I decided to do a couple of these little grain type looking designs. And then when you do your big cut across the side, this is going to let the air escape the bread. You want it to go deep. And you want it to do it quickly and all in one cut. And this is what we have. This part did take a little bit of practice, and every single loaf, you guys, turns out completely different. So then I'm going to get my very, very hot Dutch oven out of my oven. And I'm going to pick up that parchment paper, put my bread in, put the lid back on, and we are going to bake it for 25 minutes. After 25 minutes, I'm going to take the lid off, and I'm always thinking to myself, it doesn't look like it's going to be done, but what it's done is it's expanded and it's baked inside. Now we want the top to get nice and brown. So now I'm going to put it back in the oven with the lid off for 8 to 10 minutes. And while it's cooking, I'm going to get my next loaf ready. So this is exactly how I do it, you guys. So I'm going to grab that other loaf of bread, I'm going to pull it out so it can sit out for about 10 minutes, and then I pull my bread out of the oven, and I got really excited about this loaf and tried to grab it with my fingers. Don't do that. Either use some dish towels or I've got hot pads here. I'm going to brush off the cornmeal from the bottom of my loaf of bread, Look at how beautiful this is. It turned out so pretty. And then I'm just gonna set that aside to cool. And then I'm going to take out that piece of parchment paper. You can see it also helps us clean up really easily, and use a dish towel to clean out anything else that was left. And here is our first loaf of bread, and it might be one of the most beautiful loaves I've ever made. So while that's cooling, I'm going to do the same process. So I've got my parchment paper, I've got my cornmeal. I'm going to flip out my dough, and I'm going to decide where I'm going to put my big cut, and then I'm going to do a little bit of decorative scoring on my bread. And now for our big cut along the side. And then this goes in the oven. Once again, it goes in the oven for 25 minutes with the lid on. And then you take the lid off and it cooks for another 8 to 10 with the lid off. And that's it, you guys. We have made bread. I hope you found this series helpful. I love making bread. It was a fun process to figure out. I've probably made at least 80 loaves of bread at this point. I love giving it away. I love eating it, of course, and they all turn out so different. Look at the second loaf, just didn't turn out as well as the first one. I could have cut that side a little bit deeper. I could have scored it a little bit deeper on the side. So if I'm going to give a loaf of bread away, I actually use freezer paper. I rip off a big piece of it, and then I'm going to take some baker's twine, and I'm going to put my bread right in the middle and then match up the sides and fold it down a couple times. And I press that down, and then I'm going to fold each side kind of like you would if you were wrapping a present. I'm going to fold each side in, and then I'm actually going to tuck both of those underneath. So I just flip them underneath, and then I'm going to take my baker's twine and I'm going to wrap it around it. Tie a little bow on top. It looks super fancy, but it honestly does not take very long at all to do this. This is how I like to give my bread away. Now, storing my bread at home, I don't put it in a plastic bag. I actually just put it on my cutting board with a clean tea towel over it. We actually eat it pretty fast, so I don't have to worry about really storing it. I will try and put some other tips about how to store your bread. You can even freeze it and eat it later. So I'll put some links below of some information I figured out. If you guys have any comments or questions, please let me know. I had a lot of fun doing this. Once again, I'm not a professional bread maker, but I really do love making bread. So thank you guys so much for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't. Give this video a big thumbs up. And if there are other tutorials you'd like to see, please let me know below in the comments. Thanks so much, you guys, for watching, and we'll see you next time.